People always tell me not to post things on the internet, so I'm posting on the internet. Hello everyone, if you don't know who I am, my name is Alex, and if you do know who I am, hello. Hi queens. Yes, anyways, today we're going to be playing with some new makeup. Yes, we are, but we are also going to be talking about something a little bit different today. I wanted to do something fun, something unique, something different, and today we are going to be talking about the biggest mass suicide in fucking history. We're going to be talking about the JONESTOWN Massacre. Now, if you don't know who Jim Jones is, let me tell you. Jim Jones had, of course, mother and a father. His father was James Jones, and his mom was Lida Jones. James Jones was living off of a disability from World War I, from a mustard gas attack, and he was described as showing little to no affection. He was not a very caring man. His wife, on the other hand, was a free spirit and didn't believe in God, which was not really a thing back then. Everyone believed in God, was very Christian, but to not believe was kind of frowned upon. And she had no desire to really even have children. But on May 13th, 1931, they had Jim Warren Jones, Mr. Jim Jones. After he was born, they moved to Lynn, Indiana, and James described his childhood as pretty much loveless, and he basically got no affection from his parents. His father was an alcoholic. He was very emotionally disconnected, and his mother did everything in her power to avoid her motherly duties. Basically, did everything to avoid being a mom. Which I'm like, okay, queen, like, I guess. His father was said to be a little sick in the head, which, you know, after going through World War II, can't really blame him. World War I. In high school, he always wore his nice, pressed, button-down shirt with slacks every single day, and loafers. That was his thing. Everyone knew him as the dude that came to school looking professional. He was just that guy. He also participated in sports and even created his own baseball team with his neighborhood friends, but he was never good at the sports that he was playing. He was just good at being a leader. As he got older, as he became a teenager, he decided that he was going to explore the many different religions that he had in his community, because he just wanted something to cling on to. He wanted to see if there was something out there that could fit what he was looking for. He wanted to find some place where he belonged. Everywhere this man went, he carried a Bible, and he would preach to random people on the streets. Just preach the gospel, preach God's word, and people would sit there and listen to him preach. At the age of 17, Jim got a job at a hospital. During his time at the hospital, he learned that this is what he loved to do. He loved working with medicine. He found it his calling. He thought it was his thing. Along with working at this hospital, he met this woman named Marceline, which would later on down the line become his wife. She liked him because he was just a super caring individual, and he believed that every single person was equal and everyone should be treated with respect regardless of their skin color or how they acted. It didn't matter. He found it his duty, I guess, to bring every single person together as one and make sure that everyone was treated fairly and equally. In June of 1949, they got married. Now, throughout this time, she believed that he was a Christian man because he still went to church, he still preached, but she found out that he really wasn't, and he was more into the spirituality of everything. He wasn't really specifically Christian. He just bounced around from a different religions. He was trying to figure out what fit him. So they would get into many arguments over beliefs and over God. Because of this, it was a big thing to Marceline. She was a very religious woman. She knew that divorce was not an option, and she knew that there was no way of getting out of this marriage. So she stuck it out and tried really hard to understand Jim's beliefs and how he viewed religion and what he believed, basically. To try and show Marceline what he believed in, he would take her to African American churches because he described them as being free. You could be free in these churches. It wasn't like you were obligated to go. And he described the white churches as too structured, way too structured. It was more of an obligation than an option to go to church with these white churches. In 1952, he was around 21 at this time. He was hired as a student pastor at a Methodist church and was about a pastor for around a year until he decided, you know what, I can't do this. I don't like being controlled. I like preaching my own thing. I don't want to have a structure. I want to start my own church. So he then decided to open his own church. He wanted to preach what he believed. Also, the church that he went to didn't allow black and white people to mix, which he thought was a really big problem. He was a very big advocate on everyone being equal. So he opened his own church. Now, this church was kind of a mix of spiritual preachings and Christianity, and his church was known for being racially integrated because this wasn't really a thing back in the day. Black people and white people just did not mix. But he pushed and he pushed and he broke those rules and he had people be integrated. He was a very big believer on the fact that everyone should be equal. Now, in the church that he opened up, his wife, Marceline, would work on paperwork and scheduling, basically telling Jones what he would be preaching that day and kind of what the agenda was for the week. The church itself was very successful and it was becoming pretty big, but he knew he couldn't ask his following for money. It was in a very low income community, so he knew he couldn't just ask these people for donations to his church. So he had a plan. Okay, my guy had a plan. His plan was he was going to perform miracles. Okay, he wanted to perform. This man was a fucking performer. He preached and performed, and that is what the fuck he did, okay? So, he would call on people from the crowd to quote-unquote heal them. Yes. And he would start off small, but he knew he had to gain their trust somehow. So he started off small, like healing headaches. If someone had a cough, he would heal their cough, and they'd be like, "Magic, your cough is gone." That is what he did. And he started gaining a lot of people's trust, and a lot of people started going to his church because they heard that he was healing people. Not only would he perform these healings at his own church, he would be a guest at different churches and would perform healings there as well. But of course, people didn't really trust him and his healings at these churches that he was guest at. So he had human plants in the crowd would call on them and they would stand up, say, "He healed me, he healed my heart defect." This one person in particular said he had a heart defect, but when he went up to Jones, he healed him. They would also do live healings, which there was one in particular. There is this one woman or man, whoever it was that was going around, would go up to people and would have to swab the inside of their mouth before he cured them of whatever it was that they needed to be cured of. Now, this person, in their hand, they would have a piece of like chicken liver, and while they were swabbing their mouth, they would drop it into this random person's mouth. And of course, obviously, when random things are dropped into your fucking mouth, you start coughing and gagging and you spit it up. And the woman, man, whoever it was, would be like, "Look, it's the cancer. It's the disease that this man had." And Jim Jones, he would be like, "Yes, cough it up. Let it go. It's the disease coming out of you. Cough it up." His healings went from headaches and coughs to curing cancer, which, again, he never healed anybody, but these audience plants were basically there to gain popularity and to gain people to go to his church. Eventually, when he gained these new followers and when they would come to his church that he gained a lot of popularity. So there would be charity plates going around, and a lot of people would put a lot of money into these charity plates that would all go back to Jones. Now, he used his money once he started getting bigger to buy a new building that held up to around 700 people. And he first called this building Community Unity, and it was in Indianapolis. Now, the building already came with the word temple carved into the side of the building. So he decided to change the name from Community Unity to the People's Temple. In 1965, the church, along with his wife, moved to Ukiah, California. The marriage between Marceline and Jim was pretty much deteriorating, and it was not doing good. They had 4 kids. 1 was biological, the other 3 were adopted. Now, during this time, his wife was very much focused on the kids. She wasn't really focused on the church or what Jim was doing. Her main focus was just on her children, as she should. She's a mom. You know, don't neglect your fucking kids. Marceline's health was pretty much deteriorating. She wasn't doing as well as, as Jim would like. So she had major back issues. So she, for the most part, was bedridden. She was sick and she could not perform sexual acts with Mr. Jones. Jones had multiple affairs on the side, and basically he knew that if it came out, it would be game over. So he came clean to his wife and explained basically that he was having an affair, and because she was bedridden, she couldn't provide the sexual explicit acts that he wanted. So he just decided to get it from a younger girl who was able to give him the sexual pleasure that he needed. Now, I would like to mention that what he preached to the church was that they could not engage in relationships because it would distract them from their preaching and worshiping of the religion. So, not only did he come clean to his wife about everything that he was doing, he also came clean to his followers and basically explained that he was having sexual affairs. Now, his following was growing pretty big, but the main way he kept his followers with him and kept them in check was through fear. The mentality that they had was that we are going to convince you, and if we can't convince you, then you are the enemy. The enemy from within. I'm just kidding. He established fear into pretty much all of his followers, saying that there were racists coming after them and they were trying to shut them down. Now, during this time, he became very controlling with the people's money. He basically, anything that they earned would be given back to him directly, and he was very controlling with everything that they did, even marriage, relationships. Basically, he did not practice what he preached at all. Now, in 1971, Jim decided to start taking drugs. He was starting to get on some very, very heavy drugs, and it was to boost his energy so he could get through the days with the church. He would take sleeping pills at night to help him fall asleep. Now, because of all the pills he was taking, he became very short-tempered, and his eyes were always red. Because his eyes were always red from all the drugs he was using, he would wear really dark, basically black sunglasses to hide his eyes. And people started noticing that he would just always wear these sunglasses inside. His excuse was that his spiritual power was just too great and that it came through his eyes, and if he were to take them off, he would blind these followers and hurt them through so much of his power in his glowing eyes. Now, a really big side effect of all the drugs he was taking was his very increased, heightened sense of paranoia. He became very paranoid over very little things, and he told his followers that government was after them and that they were listening to them through their phones, and they always had to be on high alert, because if they weren't on high alert, then they would attack. Jim wanted to have his own little promised land where they were free from attack from the CIA and the FBI. So in May of 1977, Jonestown was open. Now, Jonestown was on a plot of land in Guyana. I believe that's how you say it. Please don't come for me. I don't know. It was open to his people, so he got all of his people to go down there, and there were cottages set up for people to live in, but there weren't enough for the hundreds of people that actually went with him down to Guyana. Now, most of his followers, when they got there, decided to chip in with money and help him build more cottages. Obviously, it wasn't Jim building these cottages. It was the people. So they chipped in money for all the supplies, but at the end of the day, they were building these cottages. Now, Jim had complete control over everything that these people did. Anything that was done had to be done with his approval, and if any of his followers wanted to be in a romantic relationship, they had to apply for approval to be in the relationship. Through him, he had to approve the relationship. Not to mention that all incoming mail was monitored by him, and all outgoing mail was also read and opened. Now, if anything bad was written in these letters about Jonestown, the letter would not be sent, and the follower who wrote the letter would be forced to rewrite the letter, only talking about all the good things that happened in Jonestown, which was literally nothing good happened there. They were up from dawn to dusk, working their asses off, building things, working all the time. There was absolutely zero privacy. Most of these cottages were severely overcrowded. There were way too many people in these cottages that, should have been in these cottages. On top of that, people just kept showing up. People just kept showing up to Jonestown, and they did not have enough space for these people to go, let alone food. They barely had any food for the people that got there, and now more people are showing up and there's barely any food for them either. Now, when it came to showers, they were told to shower with their mouth closed because the water was so polluted that if it got in their mouth, they would get severely sick. Meanwhile, Mr. Jones over here had a beautiful, nice cabin that he lived in with his wife and a couple of mistresses. Yeah, he lived with his mistresses, guys, his wife and his side chicks. They all lived in the same place. Isn't that crazy? I know. His cottage had a generator that powered a refrigerator where he kept some of his food, and the fans in there, it would power those too. And his bed was a nice, soft little mattress, while everyone else was sleeping on hard pieces of shit. Okay? In his cottage room, whatever it was, he also had a radio, like an intercom, set up in his room, so he would make all these announcements to the people outside in the community to let them know what was going on and the things that they had planned for that day. And also, he would play music over the intercom while they worked, and he would preach on the intercom. It was a big thing. Now, Jonestown was actually funded by his followers' social security checks, which wasn't a lot of money, and it could barely keep Jonestown afloat with the money that was coming in. I mean, you can't survive off of everyone's social security checks. It's just not gonna happen. So these people would start manufacturing toys, and they would sell them in the nearby town, Georgetown, for money. And all the money that they made from the little toy cars and trains that they made, which were all carved from wood, would be given directly back to Jones. Now, for food, they pretty much lived off of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and on Sunday, Jones would give them a cookie as a reward. Just a singular, tiny cookie. Now, the drinks that they would live off of would be usually mostly water or Kool-Aid, because Kool-Aid could be mixed in with water. It was super inexpensive to buy, so he would give them Kool-Aid. Anyone who was deemed a rule breaker, basically anyone who tried to leave or have a mind of their own, would be forced to sleep and eat separately from everyone. And they were also required to run everywhere, and no one was allowed to even speak or so much as look at them. Because if you did, you would get treated the same way, Pookie Bear. Jonestown grew to a population of over 900 people. Yeah, 900 people. And every single person, excuse me, you can't even see my face, I'm sorry. Hold on. Now, these 900 people were all required to attend nightly meetings. And at these meetings, he would sometimes preach, but more often he would give, you know, the little rundown of what was happening in the world, like all the news, most of which was pretty much, you know, made up, and fucking fake. You know, I don't know how he stayed up this late and would carry on to 2, 3 in the morning talking about these bullshit events that were happening. And you know what? We're just gonna say it was the drugs, because during this whole time he was still abusing drugs. So we're gonna say that that was the reason. Like I said, these people would work every day from early in the morning to 6 p.m. Over time, Jim grew very frustrated because there was little to no progress being done within Jonestown. But also, how do you expect any progress to be done when you're barely feeding them and they have no energy and you're keeping them up till 2, 3 in the morning? How do you expect to do that? I don't understand, Mr. Jones. How do you expect to do any of that? Most of his followers were becoming very unhappy with the lives that they were having in Jonestown because it was really overcrowded and there wasn't enough room for any of them. And most of these people were being physically tortured by this man. And it was not easy to leave either because Jim had their passports locked up, and if you wanted to leave, you had to pay for it yourself. But it was really hard to pay for these things because no one was making any money, and the money that was made was given directly to Jones. Now, some members did escape and spoke up to the media in America about their experiences and life, which caused newspapers to cover stories and write about it and speak out about everything that was going down in Jonestown. Now, obviously, Jim knew about this, how people were speaking up and trying to get the media's attention, so he started getting a little bit more paranoid and made his own security team. Now, this security team had guns, many weapons that were being smuggled in. And if people tried to leave Jonestown or disobey rules, the security team would either threaten them or shoot them. Now, in February of 1978, Jim called all of his people to gather for an emergency meeting in the middle of the night where he told the people that soldiers were coming to attack Jonestown and that the CIA was onto them. Their whole intention was to go out and kill the followers living in Jonestown, including the children. Now that is what got the adults. They were like, no, not the children. So he told them instead of allowing themselves to be killed, they must take their own lives, and by doing this, it would take the triumph from their enemies. So most of his followers agreed, and they thought this was the best idea to like stop this whatever was going on. But other people just wanted to fucking leave. They didn't want anything to do with this shit. They just wanted to leave. And I don't blame them. I would want to leave too. Like, I would really want to leave. Like, real bad. In this liquid mixture that he made that he said would kill these people, he just, made a little Kool-Aid drink, and he told them that they had to drink this liquid and they would die within 40 minutes. And it would be a peaceful, easy death. Now, after every single person drank the liquid and the last person finished their cup, he was like, just kidding. You didn't drink anything. It was just a loyalty test. Yeah, he basically lied to them all. Kind of fucking crazy. At this point in time, Jim Jones was getting a lot of notice in America, and people were begging, and I mean begging, for people to go out there and to investigate and look at Jonestown. So finally, in November of 1978, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan went to Guyana to inspect the People's Temple activities, and he was mainly there investigating rumors that some of the previous members that were there, that cult members were being held against their will, and that they were being subjected to physical and psychological abuse. Which, by the way, was very true. They were very much getting beaten and psychologically abused. On November 17th, he arrived in Guyana at Jonestown / People's Temple to inspect what was going on, all those suspicious activities that he was hearing about. And he basically confirmed it. He was a little scared, so people were asking him to leave. They were like, please take me with you. Help me. So he was like, you know what? Anyone that wants to leave, come on, we'll take you. Now, they were getting on their little truck, whatever it was, to leave to the airport. And before they left, they got bombarded with Mr. Jones' security team. And his security team decided to open fire on them. And no one was hurt. luckily. So now Ryan and his team was like, oh fuck, we gotta go. Like, this is some serious shit. We gotta go, Pookie. We gotta go. So they finally got to the airstrip of this little plane, whatever it was, and Jones' security team ended up following them to this airstrip and opened fire again on all of these people, and 5 were killed, including Ryan and 4 of his other team members, and 11 people were injured. Now, obviously, Mr. Jones knew what was going on and knew that his security team had killed these people and opened fire twice, 2 times. Now, while this was going on at the airstrip, Jim went on the intercom and told them, all right, emergency meeting, it's time to go. We gotta enact our plan. It's time. Now, in this final meeting, Jim told people that he tried his damn hardest to give them the best life that they could possibly have, and that one of the people on the plane was going to shoot the pilot and blame it on the people of Jonestown, and it would bring their enemies into the town, and people had literally no idea what happened on the airstrip. Jim was just spewing bullshit out of his ass. The only person that knew was him. So yeah, he just made up this elaborate story. It was fucking nuts. Now, Jim told them that he had a solution. Yeah. And that it was time for them to drink the magical liquid. But he didn't consider it as an act of suicide, but as a revolutionary act. Now, many of the members refused to drink it or even beg to be let go, but they didn't want to drink this poison. Okay? And some people thanked him for what he had done for them. Thanked him. I don't know why they thanked him, but he did. Now, they recorded all of their nightly meetings, all of their preachings. So the last meeting that they had was on recording, and you can search it up on YouTube. I really don't recommend doing that, but you can, and you can hear the last meeting that they ever had. Basically, the first people to die were the children. They were either injected it into their mouths or they were giving it via syringe, and they were given, it was nuts. The children were the first to die, not the parents, the children. Now, after the babies were injected with this drink, the parents then either willingly drunk from the cup, or they were also pinned down and forced to drink it, or they were injected it with a syringe, which is nuts. It's fucking nuts. Yeah. No, it was terrible. And on the video recording, you can hear the people dying, screaming, begging in the background. Begging. Like, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. Like, you can hear it all on these voice recordings. And it was sick. He watched all of these people die and heard all of them die. The day after, the Guyana defense troops were sent to Jonestown, and they found a horrific scene. There were bodies everywhere, and some of them had markings where the poison was injected. When they found Mr. Jones's body, he and one of his mistresses were sprawled out on the stage in the pavilion gym, and they had a gunshot wound to the head. In the voice recording that is online, you can hear the last person die, and when the last person dies, he shot himself in the head. Yep. Now, originally, the local Guyanese, or if I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. They reported that there were 383 deaths, and the word got back to the U.S. that they were investigating, and American troops were sent down to Jonestown to investigate. And, there were more and more bodies found a week after the event happened, where they were still investigating. It came out to a total of 909 people that were dead. And this doesn't include the people that were shot and killed for trying to escape or that died from torture. This was just the mass suicide at the very end. Investigators ended up searching the compound, and over 60,000 printed pages and several hundred tape recordings of all the meetings were taken by the FBI, and they spent hours upon hours going through every single bit of it as evidence. In Mr. Jim's cabin, they found $500,000 along with so many guns. Yeah. And they spent absolutely months trying to identify these victims, and some were lucky enough to be identified through fingerprints or, if they were fortunate enough, dental records. But most of the victims didn't go to a dentist, didn't go to a doctor in years, and most of them were seriously decomposed because of the humidity and the heat of the climate that they were in Guyana. So most of the bodies were already too badly decomposed to even identify them, and 409 were never identified. In Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, California, they offered a ground for a mass grave where these 409 people were laid to rest on May 11th in 1979. At the end of the day, all of the Jim Jones churches were seized and closed down, as well as the many, many, many bank accounts that he had hiding overseas, and they had over $7 million. Yeah. What the fuck was he using that money for? What was he saving that money for? Because he wasn't spending it on fucking Jonestown. He wasn't helping his people at all. All the money that was taken from his bank accounts was given back to the family members of the victims. Some of the families were filing lawsuits because they were reporting everything that was going on, saying that things were weird, they never got a letter, all this stuff, and the government didn't do anything to go investigate. So they were trying to sue for that reason. They were trying to sue for the emotional damage. They wanted more, and the government did not give it to them. Unfortunately, the lawsuits went on for a very long time. And the only two people that were ever tried were Larry Layton, who was tried in the United States for the involvement of the November 18th events, and he was found guilty of conspiracy and aiding and abetting in the murder of Ryan and the attempted murder of U.S. Embassy official Richard Dwyer, and he was sentenced to life in prison, though he was released in 2002. Now, another man, Charles Beekman, I believe, also pleaded guilty to the attempted murder of a young girl and served a 5-year prison term in Guyana. Those were the only two people that were tried for anything. After all that, yeah, I mean, can't really try anyone else. They all died, but I just think it's kind of nuts how big this cult was and how crazy it ended up being. It was just so nuts. And to think if someone would have put an end to it sooner, or if the government or if anyone would have come out and been like, no, we gotta end this, like, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe these people would have still been alive, but maybe with a lot of trauma too. In conclusion, that is the story of the Jonestown Massacre. Now, if you enjoyed this little story time and would like to hear more, please let me know. If you don't want me to do any more murder mystery story times, also let me know. I won't do it anymore. But yeah, I hope y'all have a good rest of your day, good rest of your night, whatever it is that you are having. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. But other than that, I will see you guys next time.